Good evening, and welcome to tonight's Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Let me introduce some members of town government that assist this board. To my left is Simone Bogarty, Assistant Town Attorney. To her left, excuse me, is Blaise Donadio, a planner in the Planning Department. You are all here tonight seeking relief from the Smithtown zoning ordinances, and it's our job to try to help you achieve the relief you're requesting whenever possible. It's up to you to provide this board with precise and accurate information so we can make a decision based on the facts presented. This board must consider the 5 area variance considerations in order to render a decision, and they are as follows. Number 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. Number 2, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. Number 3, whether the requested area variance is substantial. Number 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And number 3, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the board, be relevant to the decision of the board, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the variance. Procedures for tonight's meeting. Cases will be called in the order they are advertised. When you are called, please present your certificates of postings and mailings to Mr. Donadio. Then you will be asked to go to the podium where you'll state your name and address for the record and proceed to tell us why you need your variance. At the end of your presentation, if anyone in the audience would like to speak on your case, they will be given one opportunity to do so. Then the applicant can come back to the podium to answer their concerns. Once the public hearing is closed, no further information will be accepted concerning the case. There are 2 ways to find out about your case. You can call the planning office tomorrow after 12 p.m., or you can wait and be notified by mail. Kilker? Is Mr. Kilker here? Sir? Can you just go to the podium, please? You just state your name and address, please.
James Kilker, 57 Dorchester Road.
This is for case 18706. My understanding is you're requesting another adjournment?
Yeah, unfortunately, in good faith, I sent out all the letters, but unfortunately, one of my neighbors complained that I didn't fill it out completely. So I spoke to Blaise, and he says that I'm going to have to ask for a continuance and redo it completely.
Okay. You've already had 4.
With COVID and everything like that, I understand.
You've had 4.
Yeah,
We'll grant you 1 more, October 25th.
okay,
That should give you enough time to get the mailings out,
thank you.
and that's it.
I understand
Okay.
completely.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The first case on the agenda, case number 18789, Anthony Nocella, 62 Hawkins Avenue, Smithtown. The location of the property is the west side of Hawkins Avenue, 398 feet north of Hawthorne Drive. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 40 feet to 36 feet for a proposed 122 square foot front deck, to increase the maximum square footage from 750 square feet to 1,000 square feet for a proposed detached garage with 363 square foot attached roof over, to add to a lawful non-conforming structure for a proposed 75 square foot first floor addition, 460 square foot 2-story rear addition, and 871 square foot second floor addition.
Good
Good
evening.
evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Nocella, 62 Hawkins Avenue, Smithtown. I bought this home in August of last year, not knowing that the home was a non-conforming structure. I plan on keeping this as my forever home, raising a family here, and unfortunately, because of non-conforming structure, that's the reason why I'm here. and I'm looking to proceed.
All right. Why is the garage going from 750 square feet, which is allowed, to 1,000?
I'm looking to attach my patio to the garage. On the side of the garage.
Looks like a carport.
Yes, it's just gonna be a roof over, so the patio's attached to the garage.
Okay. Anyone on the board have any questions on the application?
No, thank you.
No, thanks.
Planning?
The only question I would raise is the board satisfied with the setbacks in the rear yard, given that the garage is increasing by 33%?
You're 10 feet off the back, but on the side, you're 8 foot.
Okay?
If we ask you to move it over another 2 feet to make it 10 all around,
That's fine.
okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the, anyone, excuse me, anyone in the audience like to speak on this application? Come on up, please. Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Could you state your name and address?
Absolutely.
And spell your last name so we get it correct for the record.
Sure. My name is Donna Leach, Leach. I reside at number 37 Mayflower Avenue. So I would be the northwest corner neighbor
Right.
to the back. My concerns would be the setbacks, the change to the overall structure seems tremendously large to what is presently there at this time. I am also concerned about the size of the garage, the use, would it be restricted to garage, and would it be inspected as so? The back and side yard setbacks, which I believe you have addressed. Also, the height of the garage overall. And would the projects be mandated to be completed? To my backyard right now, which is not associated with this particular property, but it is right next to them. And they did a complete garage, tear down, put up a larger structure, and I am looking now at not much more than a larger structure and pink wrap since the spring. So when someone sets out to do a project, is there a somewhat of a mandatory completion time frame?
We cannot put one on there. You know, we don't know the availability of the contractors, you know, material for the job, weather conditions.
Of course, and this is going to be a two-story home. There was an enclosed patio on the back of this premises. I don't know if that's what the gentleman was referring to was something that was perhaps not permitted at the time. So is this going over and above what was previously there as what appeared to be an enclosed patio structure? Is this now going up 2 stories high for the entire backyard?
We'll bring them back to answer that question for you.
Okay, I would appreciate that, because I am in full view, and I certainly do have respect for and appreciate anyone that is continuing to improve their property, because that is a good thing for the town, and I also respect that the things were sent out in the mail. That was very responsible of the individual, because some people just don't do that, and kudos and a pat on the back for them for actually doing it. And with regards to the garage itself, is that something that is going to be used as a garage structure, or will there be electrical and plumbing
We will ask.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for hearing me.
You're quite welcome. Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to be heard in this application? You have to go up to the microphone, ma'am.
No, I came because,
Could you introduce yourself
I'm sorry.
and spell your last name so we get it
My-
correct for the record?
My name is Carol Sauer, that's S like in Sam, A-U-E-R,
Okay.
and I live at 55 Dorchester Road, Smithtown. And Mr. Kilker's case was postponed. I came because I thought it was going to be heard tonight, and I wanted to say something about it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I just wanted to let you know that I was here, and I do have some pictures. I don't know if you would be,
You could bring it the next time. if you
bring it
would.
the next time.
Right.
And that was adjourned until
October
October?
25th, which is the last adjournment.
Okay,
If he's not here, that's it for that
Okay.
case.
okay, thank you very much.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Is there anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case? No? You want to come back, please? Okay.
I have to introduce myself again, or?
Well, you know, it's the height of the garage. It's what,
The
15 feet?
The height of the garage, 15 feet, yes. The
15
height of the
feet,
garage is
which
15
is-
feet, there's no plumbing.
You're not going any higher?
No,
There's no plumbing in it
no,
whatsoever? No
Nope.
kitchen?
Nope.
None of that? The roof over, is it 15 feet?
the top of the roof is 15 feet, yeah.
And
The
it's
highest point,
It's over an existing patio?
correct.
Existing patio? that was
No,
there.
on the house,
No, no, on the carport. I mean, on the...
on the garage now, there's nothing,
on the
there's just a
garage.
garage there now.
Okay,
I think she was pertaining to the back of the house, there's a screened-in sunroom on the back of the
oh,
house.
okay, right,
That is gonna now be part of the house, it's not gonna be a sunroom no more.
okay. And it's a,
And
Two-
the house is basically taking what it is, and it's going on top, half of the house is going on top.
Right.
The whole house isn't getting an addition on top.
okay,
All right,
all right, thank you.
thank you.
Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application, it's been seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18790, Nicole Arcario, 12 Hayrick Lane, Comac. The location of the property is the northeast corner of Hayrick Lane and Bluegrass Lane. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum setback from lot line from 10 feet to 0 on Bluegrass Lane for an existing 6-foot fence.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You submitted all the proper paperwork, the power of attorney?
We did. I have a power attorney for the project.
Okay, fine, thank you. Could you introduce yourself?
Hi. Sean Bird, architect, office 1049 Park Boulevard, Massapequa Park, New York, 11762.
Could you spell your last name, Sean? so we get it
Bird,
correct?
B-I-R-D.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We are before you for a maintain of an existing fence on a corner lot. We proposed a in-ground swimming pool in a compliant location on the property. The fence is pre-existing. My client did notify me that her father put the fence up in approximately 1990, replaced the fence about 10 years ago. She was left the home recently, so she is now the owner of the home, is proposing putting the pool in. Would like to maintain the pool, the fence in that location, which will serve as the pool protection. The photos that we submitted to the board with the application shows it doesn't really obstruct the corner view. If you see, it doesn't really obstruct the views to the stop sign. We feel that the fence isn't a detriment to the community, and we are hoping to maintain it in its location that it currently stands.
We were at the house this morning, Mr. Donati and myself. The fence doesn't pose a problem for visibility, but that huge shrub on the corner, you can't see anything coming. You really have to pull out into the roadway.
I would agree. I'm sure if the board
Hopefully your
seemed fit,
client
we can maintain
cut that back a little bit.
I'm sure she would have no problem.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application? Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please? Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18792, Salvatore and Ryan Alaperti, 31 Gaymore Lane, Comac. The location of the property is the south side of Gaymore Lane, 377 feet west of Roxbury Drive. The property is owned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 40 feet to 36 feet for an existing 32-square-foot front portico, to reduce the required minimum side yard from 12 feet to 9 feet, reduce the required total side yards from 28 feet to 23 feet for an existing 32-square-foot side portico.
Good evening.
Good evening. Salvatore Alaperti, 31 Gaymore Lane, Comac, New York.
Okay.
I'm just proposing to get an exception on a front portico, reduced, like he said, from 40 feet to 36 feet, and then a side portico from 12 feet to 9 feet.
Just those two variances.
Just those two, yes.
Okay. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
Second?
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18793, Koskin Ozturk, 15 Florida Avenue, Comac. The location of the property is the northeast corner of Florida Avenue and Old Pine Lane. The property is owned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard setback on Florida Avenue from 40 feet to 36 feet for an existing second-story balcony. Reduce the minimum front yard setback on Old Pine Lane from 40 feet to 15 feet for an existing 85-square-foot shed. Reduce the minimum front yard setback on Old Pine Lane from 40 feet to 34 feet for an existing 119-square-foot outdoor kitchen and existing AC unit. Reduce the minimum side yard setback from 12 feet to 0 for an existing 98-square-foot shed and 12 feet to 11 feet for 2 existing air conditioning units. Reduce the setback from lot line on Old Pine Lane from 12 feet to 2 feet for an existing 6-foot PVC fence. Increase the permitted paved surface area in the front yard on Florida Avenue from 25% to 39% for existing paving.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Dennis Cook, 245 Route 109, West Babylon, New York, 11704.
You submitted all the necessary paperwork, power of
Yes.
attorney, everything?
Yep.
Okay.
My client obviously lives on a corner lot. He made various improvements to his backyard. And as you know, with corner lots, it's a tricky situation because you actually have 2 front yard setbacks. His backyard is very nice and very well maintained. And he's trying to get everything legalized. The balcony, which is, as it's referred to in the front, is actually just more of it's a portico with a flat roof and a rail about it. There's a window there, but there's no door to access it. So it's not like a real balcony that you could go out on.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. In the rear property line, you do have a fence that encroaches on the neighbor's property?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be moved back on?
Yes, yep,
Your client's property?
yes.
I also have that on the eastern property line, the fence encroaches about 6 inches.
Yeah, we'll make sure that both
Onto
of
the-
those are
All
rectified.
right, so it'll be conditioned that the fence is moved back onto your,
Yeah.
okay, fine.
Is that shed right next to the property line?
The shed, yes, it's pretty close.
Chairman, while we were doing the environmental review of this project, we also noticed that the shed encroaches onto the neighbor's property. I believe it's half a foot.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, of course, that would have to be moved onto his property.
Oh, yes, it does.
Yes, can't be on someone else's property.
Okay. Anyone else on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thanks.
No? Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? No? Can I have a motion to close the application?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, have a good night.
You too.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18795, Michael Iacano, 219 6th Street, St. James, the location of the property, the northwest corner of 6th Street and 5th Avenue. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the setback from lot line on 5th Avenue from 10 feet to 0 for an existing 6-foot wood fence.
Good evening.
Good evening, how are you? My name is Michael Iacono, 219 6th Street. The fence was existing. I installed had a pool installed this year. Couple of the concerns about having a 4-foot fence is I have a Border Collie Australian Shepherd mix. He'll hop right over a 4-foot fence. The other concern is people coming into my backyard through a 4-foot fence into my pool. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay. Anyone on the board have any questions?
No, thanks.
No. David, you have any comments on this one? I think there's an encroachment.
Mr. Chairman, during our environmental review, we noticed that there was encroachment off of the property. Not sure.
I'm sorry, I'm not following you.
On the western portion of your property?
So on the 5th Avenue side?
Yeah, I believe the,
So that's a 7-foot setback off of the curb, currently. But like I said, that's how I bought the house.
Yeah. Well, it's,
I don't have the one.
I think the fence is a foot on the back of the property. It's a foot over. North and west.
On two sides, on the north and west sides, the fence that is used to surround the pool is off the applicant's property.
So it's going too far to,
It's on your neighbor's property, on the north side and on the west side. One's 2
the
foot.
west side fence isn't my fence. That fence, there's a white PVC fence with a gray insert that was in,
Oh,
you know,
looks like
again, that's my neighbor to the west sides.
Oh, is it? Looks like it's tied into your fence on the,
No, I just have the wood fence.
okay, so then it's just the fence in the rear.
So what's the,
You have to move it onto your own property.
okay. I'll have to take a look at that. Because it lines up right with the other PVC fence. So would that mean that his fence is on their property as well, or? You know, it's a pretty straight line, but do I have to get it resurveyed? I mean, I mean,
Yes, sir, we're just going from the survey that you submitted with your application, so that is
It was
really
an
all the
existing,
information we have. You know, you'd have to kind of explore that with your survey, your dimensions, and
We can't grant you permission to put
no,
something
no,
on your neighbor's
exactly,
property.
yeah. Just, yeah, take over somebody's property. I got
All
you.
right?
Okay.
Okay, so it's just the fence on the north side.
Okay, so probably just need a resurvey and make sure that it's, if it is in fact, obviously move it, but if not,
Right.
okay,
All right?
all right.
Okay, thank you. Is, anything else? No? Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? No? Can I have a motion to close the application?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Here we go. The next case on the agenda, case number 18797, Thomas Burke, 17 Twin Oaks Drive, Kings Park. The location of the property is the east side of Twin Oaks Drive, 646 feet south of Sunken Meadow Road. The property is zone R15. The applicant is requesting variances to increase the maximum height from 15 feet to 23 feet, to increase the maximum square footage from 750 square feet to 1,000 square feet, for a proposed 1,000 square foot detached garage.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. I've submitted the affidavits of posting and mailing to Mr. Donadio. If you look at the plans submitted, I see they're up on the screen there. The garage is not the normal peak garage. It's a gambrel roof, which makes the garage a lot more conforming to the area. You can see that the garage is placed about 180 feet back from the street and will not be visible by cars or passers-by. So actually, the only people that would be affected by it are the neighbors to the right and to the left. And those neighbors both have submitted letters, which I can submit to you now, Mr. and Mrs. Costa and Mrs. Shanahan. So they have no objection to the garage being built. They have viewed the plans and are in consensus with Mr. Burke that the garage will not have any effect on them. Well, what about the back of the property and that neighbor? That neighbor, it's vacant land, and I don't think it'll ever be built on. It's owned by St. Johnlin Nursing Homes, and the St. Johnlin people are really across the street from where this property is. So it's vacant and wooded. So why do we need such a extreme height? And I know that's on your collective minds right now. Well, Mr. Burke is an avid sailor, and he's not a motorboat sailor, he's a sailboat sailor. And most of his time off, and I'll get to what he does for a living, is spent fixing, repairing his sailboats. And one of his sailboats is approximately with the mast and the actual hull of the boat, and of course it's on a trailer. The total height is about 22 feet. Now, I asked Mr. Burke, well, why can't you work on the mast in a horizontal position? He said, you can't do that because there are wires and lines and pulleys that have to be fixed and oiled and whatever else has to be done, and it has to be in a vertical position. So his idea was to build this garage, and you can again see from the plans it's really clear space, and he hopes to bring in the sailboat, raise the mast between the collar ties, which are the mast and the sailboat together with the trailer is probably 22 to 22 and a half feet. And that's the way he can accurately work on the sailboat. Right now, he goes to Northport to spend his time at the marina working on the boats. Which brings me to the next concern the board may have. Mr. Burke is not only a volunteer fireman in Kings Park, but his profession is New York City Fire Department. And the type of work that the firemen do in the city, they're 24 hours on and 24 hours off. So if he were able to not spend his time so much at Northport, but could be at home in his off time, he'd be better able to answer fires when many of the volunteer firemen are at work and cannot make the fires. So why is he a New York City fireman, a volunteer fireman? I guess he wants to give back to the community. And he's really given it back big time. So really, that's the only reason for the height of the garage. It's got no other use. Of course, he would be storing equipment, lawnmowers and the like. But if you could look at the plans, you'll see it's kind of clear story with steel beams. It's not anything that could be later changed. Well, I guess you could change anything, but his intention is not to do anything other than use that clearance to work on his boats. And again, I said that, you know, the neighbors from either side will have written notes to the board saying that they have no objection. The only other thing I'd like to mention, there is a cupola on the top. That's not counted in the 23 feet height. So I guess we could eliminate it if the board felt it should be eliminated. And I don't even know if it's counted by the building department. It was shown on the plans, and they didn't go up another 3 or 4 feet. But if the board so desires, we could eliminate that. That's really for light to come through to the building. So that's my case. I have Mr. Burke here if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Donadio, is that cupola included?
Cupolas are not included in the height of the structure.
Not included. Okay.
Cupolas are not included in the height of the structure.
Okay. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No.
No, thank you.
No? Planning?
No, thank you.
Do you have anything, David?
Yeah, during the environmental review, we identified the height, size, and location of the proposed detached garage as concerns regarding the possible over-intensification of the use. And we wanted to see any testimony tonight and any comments from the public prior to making a recommendation.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Yeah, we just will put it in a file. And, those, they go in Brooks' file, the letters.
Steve? Yeah. For the file. Hey. It takes forever to get them down here, so we figured we'd hold out a little bit, come back the other way.
Okay. The next case is case number 18798. Ryan Foy, 32 Amapola Lane, Kings Park. Location of the property is the east side of Amapola Lane, 640 feet north of Primrose. Yeah, hang on. The east side of Amapola Lane, 640 feet north of Primrose Lane. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum rear yard from 50 feet to 38 feet for a proposed 221 square foot rear deck.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Ryan Foy. I'm the owner at 23 Amapola Lane. My architect's going to be presenting the case.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you.
Again, could you state your name and address, please, for the record? Spell your last name so we get it correct.
Sure. My name is Nicholas Pfluger, it's spelled Pfluger. I'm at 85 East Main Street, Bay Shore, New York, 11706. As Mr. Foy said, I'm the architect on the project. We're here requesting a variance to reduce the rear yard setback to 38 feet from the required 50 feet for a proposed 221 square foot second story deck. The deck is on the second story because the house is a high ranch house, so all of the main living spaces are on that upper level. We are requesting the variance because we are also proposing to build a two-story addition. This in turn is pushing the proposed deck back beyond the required rear yard setback. The two-story addition itself would be within all of the required setbacks. We have a few examples of houses in the area that seem to have similar rear yard setbacks, and I do have aerials I can submit to the board to show those setbacks. But we have 29 Amapola Lane that has about a 32-foot rear yard setback. 9 Amapola Lane that has a 33-foot rear yard setback, and 24 John Quill Lane that has a 33-foot rear yard setback, all of which are to the main dwelling on those properties rather than a deck or anything like that. In closing, we feel that the proposed work is in line with the character of the neighborhood. It would not cause any negative effect on the surrounding area, and we have not heard of any objections from any of the neighbors at this point. And I can take any questions that the board may have.
All right, thank you.
Welcome. And I can also submit the aerials if you would like them.
If you want to submit them, I'll take them. Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thanks.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Excuse me. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second?
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
This lady's asking a question, what is she?
Donna Leach again. I just wanted to ask a general question.
A what?
Is there a way to get a transcript? Is a transcript available to be requested?
I believe you can.
Yeah,
It's
it usually,
online.
And how would,
tomorrow, as of tomorrow morning, there will be a video feed of this public hearing available on the town's website.
yes, and typically the audio quality is very poor.
Right.
Which is why I was,
Usually, we get a paper copy of the minutes of the hearing
Sure.
approximately 2 weeks after the date of the hearing. So approximately 2 weeks from today, a paper copy will be in our office available for review.
thank you
And if
so
you wanted to
much.
get an electronic copy of it, we can probably email it to you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Ready? The next case on the agenda, case number 18796, Anthony Piliero, 44A King Arthur Court, St. James. The location of the property is the west side of King Arthur Court, 211 feet south of Gordon Gate. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting a special exception to permit temporary living quarters for a parent. A variance request to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 75 feet to 66 feet for an existing 739 square foot deck.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Plero, 44A King Arthur's Court, St. James. Mr. Morbello would be speaking on my behalf.
Fine. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Michael Morbillo. I am an architect. My firm is Nspire Design Group. My office is located at 273 Lake Avenue in St. James, New York. Just to start off, the application before you this evening is for a special exception for family living quarters and also for a deck, that was, as was stated on the call of the meeting. I just wanted to make reference that I am in receipt of a planning advisory report dated September 23rd, 2022. And I have reviewed it with my client, and we are in full acceptance of all the recommendations that are within that report. And so I'll briefly go over the application. I'll start off with the proposal. We're proposing an addition onto the rear of the home, and that addition is basically behind a garage area. It's located on the northwest side of the house. It's basically behind a garage. There's also an existing screen room that's on the house that's being converted as part of this addition. And we are keeping within the allowable area. We're meeting all of the requirements for the special exception. We're not exceeding, we're 998 square feet, so we're not exceeding the 1,000 square foot maximum. We're also under the 4% lot requirement. The application is not, the location of the living quarters will not have an impact on the environment, and certainly we feel is the most appropriate location for this. We also are here before you this evening for a deck. It's an existing deck that is located on the southwest side of the house. And it was there when my client had purchased the house, and we became aware of it, that there was no permit for it while we were in the process of preparing drawings for the addition and living quarters. And so the property, as was noted in the planning advisory report, has a jog in it. So it's basically about 60% of the property we would be in conformance with the setbacks, but since there's a little jog on the southwest corner of the property on the plot plan, we have this jog which is narrowing the distance to this deck that's here that was there when my client purchased the house. So it represents about a 12% encroachment into the rear yard setbacks, or at 66 feet as opposed to 75 feet. As was noted in the advisory report, the property is pretty well landscaped. There's arborvitaes and other things that are along the property line and pretty much shield the deck and the addition, the proposed addition. So if the board has any questions this time, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Sure.
Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
As Mr. Morbillo mentioned, the Planning Department did prepare a report. Based on our review of the application, we recommended approval.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. The Department of Environment and Waterways identified some concerns during the preliminary review. We have reached out to Mr. Morbillo's office to ask for more information. Our concern was related to the large size of the existing dwelling, coupled with the recent addition of living space above the garage and the current proposal to add 1 or 2 bedrooms. This may then exceed Suffolk County Department of Health standards and require an application to them. So at this time, we're not prepared to complete a environmental recommendation on this application.
Okay. We do have an application for an upgraded septic system to an IA system, which is pretty much customary when we do these types of additions on the home. So that is in the works on this, and so that was expected that we'd have to upgrade the septic system.
If you could just give us a copy that you had submitted an application to the Health Department, that would suffice for our need.
As you may be aware, their portal is down. We have a lot of electronic stuff in there, but as soon as that becomes available, we'll immediately forward it over to you. We do have, we probably have some email on it, but it's not as readily accessible as it has been.
All right. All right.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who wants to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18799, Broadley Avenue Development Company, LLC. The location of the property is on Middle Country Road in Smithtown, the southwest corner of Middle Country Road and Broadley Avenue. The property is zoned LI. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum parking from 131 to 118 spaces, to reduce the minimum parking setback from the north side property line from 6 feet to 4 feet, to reduce the minimum parking setback on Broadley Avenue from the front property line from 50 feet to 21 feet, to reduce the minimum parking setback on Broadley Spur from the property line from 50 feet to 2 feet, to reduce the minimum parking setback along the front and side lot line from 6 feet to 2 feet, to eliminate the required landscape islands and parking rows for a proposed 45,296 square foot industrial building with 33,296 square foot of first floor warehouse, 6,000 square feet of second floor office, and 6,000 square feet of second floor wholesale space.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Daniel Falasco. I am the engineer on the project. I have with me tonight Christopher and Pelops Damianos, who are Damianos Realty Group, who are the owners of the subject property, which is the Broadley Avenue Development Company. I also have with me Pong Moy from Mancini Moy Architects, in case there's any questions that I may not be able to answer. Very briefly, there are 6 variances that we are seeking, as spelled out by Blaze. The first one is reduce the minimum parking from 131 to 118. Blaze, I don't know who operates that, but could you go back to the aerial photo? Thank you. This piece of property right in here, which is not shaded in blue, was also owned by the Broadley Avenue Development Company. That property has been dedicated to the town of Smithtown, and the Damianos Group built, at their own expense, the connecting road so that there is a much safer flow of traffic in the area, so that cars could now exit Smithtown Boulevard instead of coming out through, Southern Boulevard, instead of coming out on Broadley Avenue right onto 25. If it wasn't for that dedication of property to the town and the construction of that road, we would have sufficient room to maintain all of our parking. We worked very closely with the town planning department, engineering department, and highway department in the development of that road. The next variance that we are seeking is the setback from the property line from 6 feet to 4 feet. If you could go to the next, again, go to the site plan. There you go. Right in this corner of the property, we will maintain the 6-foot setback to our neighboring property. The property where we are seeking the 4 feet is actually property, again, owned by Damianos Realty Group. And the reason for the variance is because at some point in time, again, with discussion with the planning department, it is the Damianos' intent to subdivide the property so that the McDonald lot and this new industrial building are on 2 separate lots. That is the reason for that variance. The next variance is the setback from the property line on Broadley Avenue from 50 feet to 21 feet. If you could go back to the aerial, please. That whole easterly section of the blue shaded area is currently a private road owned by Damianos Realty Group. It is used for access to the sports arena in the rear, and we are also working very closely with the planning department, engineering, and highway to dedicate that to the town as well upon completion of its redevelopment by and paid for by the Damianos Realty Group. Without that, we would have sufficient setbacks, in my opinion, to meet your criteria and your zoning requirements. So again, the purpose of the variances is so that we can give this property to the town and redevelop it for safety purposes. The next variance, number 4, is again along what we're calling, whoops, why is it working anymore? There it is. Oh, oh, there it is. Again, it's that area right in there along what they're calling the Broadley Spur. That is the area that has been developed, paid for, and constructed by Damianos Group. Again, without that, we would have sufficient setback for our parking. The next variance, number 5, is the minimum setback along this portion of the property. This in here, years ago, was condemned and acquired by New York State DOT, was owned by Damianos Realty Group for the purposes of developing a recharge basin to take the water from Middle Country Road and recharge it into the ground. So that is where we need that variance. Up against that property, there is really nothing behind it. There's no development, nor could they be development. It's owned by the state for a recharge basin. And the last one is the eliminating the required landscaped islands for parking. If you go to the site plan, please. Your code requires that every so many stalls, there has to be a 9-foot wide by 18-foot wide landscaped island. What we are doing, instead of that, we are proposing to put a much larger landscaped area separating the parking stalls so that anybody coming down the newly constructed Broadley Avenue, Town of Smithtown Town Road, it'll block the view of the building. That's the area we're talking about. That's a much larger landscaped area that is required than if we put the isolated little small landscaped areas between the parking. As you can see, most of our variances are because of dedications and reconstruction of roads at the expense of the Damianos Realty Group. And the other variances I consider to be minor. That's my presentation. If there's any questions, be more than happy to answer them.
I see you have 6 large truck loading dock
Yes.
areas.
That's correct.
Is there sufficient room for those trucks to back in there if cars are parked across the way?
There have been traffic templates, truck templates put on the property, and that'll also be reconsidered again during the actual development of the site itself. Right now, we do not have final plans for the building. They're being worked on now, and if there is a need, and if we have to make a building slightly smaller to accommodate that, obviously we will. These will be the maximum variances we believe we need.
All right, thank you. Is your architect going to speak, or?
No.
No? Matt? Anyone else on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No. David?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
David, I have a question. I notice it says under secret unlisted action, usually that says neg deck also.
This is an unlisted action by the state environmental quality review laws. There's 3 types of actions. Type 2s, unlisted, and type 1s. Unlisted just means it's a kind of a medium-sized development proposal. We also, I believe, gave the documentation for a recommended negative declaration.
Okay, and I
No
notice we're
significant
missing
impact.
Suffolk County planning.
Mhm.
We're missing Suffolk County planning on this one.
I think you're going to be missing that for a while. Yeah,
Okay,
so-
thanks.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please? Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
But this is up.
You guys. All right. The next case on the agenda, case number 18791, Bola EM Realty LLC, 2207 Jericho Turnpike, Comac. The location of the property is the north side of Jericho Turnpike, 135 feet west of Ruth Boulevard. The property is owned WSI and NB. The applicant is requesting a modification of a special exception for an existing car wash. Variance to reduce the required parking from 26 spaces to 15 spaces. To increase the permitted number of ground signs from a maximum of 1 to 4. To reduce the required setback of a ground sign to a residential district from 75 feet to 28 feet. To increase the number of wall signs permitted from 1 signs to 3. To permit 2 wall signs not to face a public street.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, fellow board members. For the applicant, David Altman, Brown Altman DeLeo, 538 Broad Hollow Road, Suite 301W, Melville, New York, Chris, I believe you submitted the affidavit of mailing and posting? Great. So, Blaze, thank you for the call. As mentioned, property is located at 2207 Jericho Turnpike in Comac. It is known by Suffolk County Tax Map Number District 800, Section 89, Block 2, and currently Lot 7.1. As mentioned, the property at issue, which is approximately 59,245 square feet or 1.36 acres, is split zone WSI, which currently has the existing car wash use on it, and to the immediate west, the parcel with the gasoline service station and accessory convenience store, which is our neighborhood business. While the recent approvals for the car wash, for the gas station and accessory convenience store had required a lot consolidation, and I believe that was effectuated recently, such that the overall the two parcels are now treated as a single lot. Nothing is being done with regard to the gasoline service station. As this board is well aware, the gasoline service station was recently granted site plan approval as well as a special use permit. The applicant does not propose to undertake any modifications or action with regard to the gasoline station parcel to the west. Nonetheless, there are some proposed modifications, mostly internal, to the car wash use that exists and has existed on this site for the better part of 60 years. I will simply note that a C of O was issued for the car wash going back to October 21st of 1960, and that's C of O 15235. And the car wash, having last undergone consideration by the town for additions of approximately 805 square feet, 374 square feet, and 110 square feet, and having received C of O 135906, and I believe that was roughly 2015 or so. So the car wash has been modified over the years, but the applicant at this time is not proposing any changes to the physical footprint of the car wash building itself. What you see in terms of the physical footprint will essentially remain today. What the applicant is looking to do, and as this board is probably well aware, this was a hand-operated car wash, rather labor-intensive use, and the applicant will be converting that to an automated self-car wash. In other words, you will pull up to the same drive-through queue along the west side of the site. There will be a small menu board, digital menu board, located along the west side of that site. That menu board will describe the types of washes that are available. That board is approximately 10.2 square feet in area. Adjacent to that menu board will be just another sign which will give you the height of clearance, which will tell the cars queuing for that line the height for purposes of entry into the car wash tunnel itself. That little clearance sign measures approximately 4 square feet, and I believe the height of the overall clearance sign itself is 9.9 or roughly 10 feet in height. It's that particular sign, by the way, which necessitates the variance for the setback to the neighboring residential district to the north of approximately 29 square feet. Those are two of the 4 ground signs. There is one ground sign which currently exists at the front of the property along Jericho, and because the lot with the gas station was consolidated, the ID and price sign for the gas station is also included as the 4th ground sign at issue here. Again, we're not making any changes to that ground sign. Cars would queue along the west side of the site. There is approximate room, if I'm not mistaken, for 7 to 8 cars to queue prior to getting to the menu board. And then once passing underneath the clearance, there's roughly room for 3 to 4 more cars before entering the rear or north side of the building, where there will be a new awning installed. One of the variances that we're seeking here tonight is for a wall sign, and it happens to be a canopy sign in this instance. It simply says entrance right above on the canopy above the entrance to the car wash. That entrance sign is approximately 6 square feet in area. The other improvements will be replacing all the mechanisms and interior work inside the car wash itself. I have with me tonight Chris Tartaglia from High Point Engineering, our civil engineer, and to the extent the board has any questions relative to that replacement of equipment, Chris can sort of walk you through that. But the building itself, as I mentioned, the footprint will remain the same. Cars will exit through the south side of the building facing Jericho. And as I'm sure this board remembers, given the duration of the operation of the hand car wash, when you came out of that hand car wash, it was a little bit of a free-for-all, so to speak, in terms of positioning vehicles for purposes of vacuuming and drying and detailing by car wash staff. That's all going away. There will be no more of that. You will simply exit the car wash, and if you as the driver wish to vacuum your car along the west side of the building, you'll see, I believe, 5 or 6 stalls where you can self-vacuum your car. If you choose not to, or you see all the stalls are occupied, you're leaving the site, but there is no more free-for-all in front of the building. There, I believe, is one attendant for purposes of operating the site. To the extent there's any issues or with motorists, et cetera, they can assist in terms of the purchasing of the car wash. But in relative to what used to transpire in terms of servicing cars post-car wash, that will not exist anymore. The applicant is proposing 2 additional wall signs, one on the south elevation facing Jericho Turnpike, which says Bola Wash, roughly a 16-square-foot sign, as Chris is pointing to there. And then there is the third wall sign, which the applicant proposes along the west facade, also saying Bola Wash. And one of the reasons the applicant is proposing that third sign is frankly for eastbound motorists on Jericho Turnpike, as well as to let folks know on the adjacent gas station to the immediate west, because there is access between the parcels. Hey, look, there's the car wash here, and to afford the motorists the ability to identify and make the safe turning movement into the site as necessary. The last variance, I think, relates to parking, and if I'm not mistaken, because again, the lots, meaning the gas station lot and the car wash lot were consolidated, there's an aggregation of parking, but given the fact, again, that this is an automated wash, the patron remains in the car and exits the site, there is little to no need for on-site parking, other than, of course, for vacuuming, and as we've mentioned, there are 5 to 6 stalls provided. I will note for the record that we have been provided with a copy of the September 21st, 2022 Planning Department Advisory Memo to the Board, which addresses the variances that I've just run through, recommends approval, and I appreciate that, with respect to most of the variances, with the exception, of course, of the wall signage. I'll simply say this as it relates to the wall signage. I know there was a prior application going back some 10 or 12 years for substantially larger wall signs along the west facade. It's what the applicant seeks today is a fairly modest 16-square-foot wall sign to notify, again, motorists, particularly eastbound motorists on Jericho, that you do have the Bola Wash there. It is certainly helpful to have that sign there. Of course, the third sign would be, again, the entrance sign above the awning to the north side. We would ask that the board consider and grant the application for the wall signage as proposed. The signage is modest at best. It's not visible by the neighboring parcels to the north. As you know, along that north border, there is a roughly 3 to 4 foot retaining wall. There is a 6-foot solid white PVC fence there, and there are existing mature evergreen plantings. The applicant, of course, is willing to install additional plantings as may be requested by the Planning Department or the Board of Site Plan Review. And as an example of that, of course, I'm sure the board is familiar with the extensive and beautiful planting that the applicant put in at the gas station to the immediate west. And this site will receive that same treatment in terms of its plantings. With that is our case. To the extent the board has any questions of myself or Mr. Tartaglia, we're happy to answer them.
Do you have a color rendering of old signs that we can see?
Chris?
Okay, you have the 2. Okay. Is there a sign on the canopy?
It's just my appearance for the record. Chris Tartaglia from High Point Engineering.
Okay.
Good evening. Yes, so this is the building elevation, which is actually up on the screen now, pointing to one or the other. So this is the 16-square-foot sign that faces Jericho Turnpike, called the front elevation or the south elevation. This is the sign along the westerly elevation, same size, 16 square feet. And this is the third sign, which was mentioned in the planning memo. There are 3 signs proposed, but this is a canopy with a decal on it that just says entrance, and it directs the customers that that's where you drive in. It might be somewhat obvious, but I've never seen a car wash that didn't have an entrance sign, and it's not illuminated. It does face the residences, but it's not illuminated. It's a decal.
Okay.
It doesn't light up. So that would be the third wall sign. Just by way of the freestanding signs, so this exhibit that I have here, it's a little bit easier to read than what we have submitted. So this actually encompasses the freestanding signs. All this is here is a menu board that faces Jericho Turnpike, and all it says is the various grades of wash that are available for the various prices. As Mr. Altman mentioned, above that and slightly behind that is actually a clearance and pay here sign, also non-illuminated. And again, it's more of just a clearance to tell vehicles that if they hit that sign, they can't go in. They're too tall. So that's basically 2 of the freestanding signs. This is the existing freestanding sign that exists, again, along Jericho Turnpike, no change. And then as David had also mentioned, we are also, because it's all one lot, we do share the ID and price sign with the adjoining gas station, which is really on the same lot. So that comprises the 4 total freestanding signs. Only 2 are proposed.
What are your hours of operation?
Sorry, so 7 a.m. open, 9 p.m. close, obviously weather dependent, snow, rain, not open at all.
7 days a week.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question regarding, you had mentioned the landscaping that they put in along the rear of the Bola service station. There is existing evergreens, as you had mentioned, behind this use. However, is that on this site? Because your site plan shows that we're kind of paved right up to the property line.
Very sharp observation, Mr. Tanzi, yes. So that actually is property that's behind the lot line, and behind that is that 6-foot-tall PVC fence. So in effect, that landscaping, because it's on our side of the fence, is maintained by us. And as Mr. Altman mentioned, they are relatively heavy, but we could offer, and I believe this might have been mentioned in Blaze's memo, we could add some extra evergreens just to fill in the bare spots back there. Again, it's not technically on Bola's property, but those evergreens have been maintained for time in memoriam by the car wash operator.
Now, does this site plan afford any ability to move so that some plantings could be put on this site? Should that be necessary?
So unfortunately, we are stuck with a 60-plus-year-old site layout and gas station, so we've run the templates, and the turning radiuses that are shown are the bare minimum that are required to be able to make the turn, get the cars straight heading into the car wash. So we do have to maintain that retaining wall where it is, just to maintain safe ability to get into that car wash.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else on the board? Planning?
As Mr. Altman had mentioned in his presentation, Planning did prepare a planning advisory report, and based on our review, we did recommend conditional approval of the application. Conditionally, we recommend that the board not approve all of the wall signs. Otherwise, we felt that the application was sufficient.
Thank you. Anything from you, David?
Environment did not identify any issues with this application.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Come on up. Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Donna Leach, Leach. I reside at 37 Mayflower Avenue in Smithtown. And no, I'm not kidding. And my family has been in this town for more than 60 years. So I am very, very familiar with this particular site and location. I find it's very sad that a gas station that's been there for that many years is going automated, and people are going to be losing their jobs if there's only going to be one attendant there responsible for it. Also, because that's what he said, one attendant would be there. Also, it is a traffic nightmare in that area. My family went to that car wash all of the time. It is at the merge of Jericho and 347, because we would take the cutoff where the roads meet over where Macy's used to be, and it's now BJ's Wholesale Center. It's a traffic nightmare because you have to drive, there has to be some allowance, because the traffic light that's across from here, is where the merge comes in, and traffic that is heading west and continuing towards Comac Road and Harnard Road area there by the, I always called it Five Corners, but there's so many lanes of traffic there. And it's a traffic nightmare there just in general with rush hour and all the improvement that's been made in the area. But the space in front of there's only perhaps maybe 3 car lengths. Will there be, for the safety of the people on the road, signs to direct them to exit only in a westward direction from that parking lot?
We'll ask.
Okay, I would appreciate that. That is just for the safety of the people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. One second. Is there anyone else? Anyone else like to speak on this application? No? Okay, that's it. Come on back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we do appreciate the comments. I just want to reiterate something that Mr. Altman had mentioned relative to the change in use and operations of this car wash. We agree, and as David had mentioned, this was a busy car wash. There were probably, I'm going to say 10 or 12 attendants working here. It was a 99% hand wash, I believe, with only a conveyor moving the vehicles through, but there were actually people in there washing the cars by hand. Very popular car wash, Saturdays and Sundays. I live in Smithtown, and it was a thing on Saturdays and Sundays. But what David mentioned is that's completely going to change. This is going to be a self-service car wash, meaning that folks that pull in there remain in their car. They don't get out. There's no more of that drying that occurred, which was the main traffic jams that folks would see at the exit right in front of Jericho Turnpike. Cars would be haphazardly everywhere. Those days are over. There's no more drying. The new equipment that's going in will actually perform all of the drying within the building. So once the cars emerge from that exit, they are completely dry and, as David mentioned, free to continue on their way. So there is really no comparison relative to the traffic in the previous operation and that which is proposed. With regard to the access, there's no changes to the access. It's been the policy of this town and the planning department specifically that on an application that's minor like this, no increase in footprint, no substantial change in use, that they did not see fit to recommend any access changes. But quite frankly, again, being a Smithtown resident almost my entire life, I don't think anybody is going to try to make that left turn out, especially on a busy traffic day. So I'm not sure they need a sign to do so. However, if the board wanted us to put a sign up to say right turn traffic only, we'd be happy to do so.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18794. Sure, hold on. Wow. Multi-Brands Pulaski Kings Park Real Estate LLC. The location of the property is on Pulaski Road, Kings Park, south side of Pulaski Road, 89 feet east of Hoffman Avenue. The property is split zone CB and RM7. The applicant is requesting a special exception to permit parking in a residence district, a variance of a special exception standard to eliminate the required 15-foot parking buffer adjacent to a residence district. Variance to reduce the distance of a drive-through window queue lane to a residence district from 50 feet to 2 feet, to reduce the distance of a drive-through window from a residence district from 75 feet to 65 feet, to reduce the distance of a drive-through menu board from a residence district from 75 feet to 15 feet, to eliminate the required 10-foot buffer screen and 6-foot stockade fence at the rear and side property lines adjoining a residence district, to reduce the parking setback to a residence district from 10 feet to 0, to increase the maximum height of a wall sign from 15 feet to 21 feet for sign number 1, to increase the maximum height of a wall sign from 15 feet to 17 feet for sign number 2, to decrease the minimum setback of a ground sign from the front property line from 5 feet to 3 feet for sign 4, to decrease the minimum setback of a ground sign from the front property line from 5 feet to 3 feet for sign number 5, to increase the maximum number of ground signs from 1 to 5, to increase the maximum number of wall signs from 1 to 2 for signs 1 and 2, for proposed 1,844 square foot commercial building with drive-through for a proposed Dunkin' Donuts.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. We've submitted the affidavits of posting and mailing to Mr. Donadio. As this board knows, this is a special exception application, and there are certain criteria that I have to go through. I will make it as brief as possible. If you look at the site plan, which is on the screen and I have in front of me here, the property is approximately 1.19 acres, and it has a width on Pulaski, which is the main road, well over the zoning requirement of CB. It's 167 feet. So there really is no issue with respect to the size of this property. It's more than adequate. To the north of the property, across Pulaski Road, is business uses such as a restaurant, a filling station, a bar, and so on. To the south, specifically on our piece, where you see the zoning line cuts through, but still, the property is a very long piece of property, and our extension for parking purposes is conforming with the 50-foot requirement. In other words, we're not going past the 50 feet. So that conforms with that special exception prerequisite. You can also see, again, the zoning line and the whole rear of the property, a substantial amount of property, I think it's about 170 feet, will be left natural. It'll be in its natural state. I passed by the property today. It's a very wooded piece, and the only area which we'll be clearing is where the front of the property is mostly on CB zoning, except for that extension of off-street parking, which again is permissible pursuant to the special exception requirements. To the east is CB and some residential homes. Some of those residential homes are actually in the CB district, and the west the same. It's CB and residential, some of which residential homes are again in the CB district. Now the building itself is about 1,843 square feet, and of the entire lot, it's approximately 3.5 percentage of the total lot, which of course does include the residential portion, most of which we are leaving untouched and will be a buffer forever between the railroad tracks, I guess, the properties to the right and to the left, which are residentially zoned. So there's approximately 170 by 130 feet, which will remain natural and will never be developed. And again, you can look at the site plan and you'll see how it's laid out. So the first special exception requirement, we conform to the extension because it's an extension of 50 feet into residential. We're not asking for any more. To reduce the distance of the drive-through queue lane to a residential district from 50 to 2 feet. But again, look at the site plan. This is a technicality, if you will, because that distance goes to the residentially zoned property that we own, again, that will never develop. So I'd ask the board to look at it with that in that light, because it's really not 2 feet. It's a substantial distance. Again, that's all residential property in the rear, and it is going to be, again, left in its natural state. The variance to reduce the distance of the drive-through window from a residential district from 75 to 65 feet. Again, we're talking about a distance that is not substantial in any manner, and part of it does affect the rear portion, which is zoned in name RM7, which is going to stay in its natural state. Variance to reduce the distance of the drive-through menu board from a residence district from 75 to 15 feet. Again, you can see on the site plan where the menu board is, and if you measure that distance to the zoning line, yes, that's what it is, 75 to 15. But in reality, we go all the way back 170 feet. So again, I'd ask the board to look at that in the light of what really and actually exists. Variance to eliminate the 10-foot buffer screen and 6-foot stockade fence at the rear of the property line adjoining a residential district. Well, again, we have the same issue. If you look at the zoning line, and we're about 170 feet to the end, to where the Long Island Railroad tracks are, it actually makes no sense to put a fence at the, and we can't, at the zoning line. Variance to enhance the required, to eliminate the required 10-foot buffer and 6-foot stockade fence at the rear and side of the property. Same argument that we make, the residential distance from the residential property is a substantial distance. Again, please look at the site plan so we all know what we're dealing with. Variance to reduce parking setback to a residential district from 10 to 0. Well, we need that because we're asking for the special exception to extend 50 feet into a residential district. So next variance is to increase the maximum height of a wall sign from 15 feet to 21 feet. That's sign number 1, and then variance to increase maximum height of a wall sign from 15 feet to 17 feet for sign number 2. As it was brought out in the planning advisory report, both signs conform with the square footage requirement of the wall sign. So it's really the height that we're asking for, and that's basically because that's the height of the building. The next thing is, although the PAR recommended a denial with respect to the two signs, which those two signs are really directional signs to get in and out of Dunkin' Donuts, we feel at least if the board would grant us one directional sign, it would be enough to direct the people how to get in to the Starbucks drive-through. Variance to reduce the setback of a ground sign from the front property line from 5 feet to 3 feet, and a variance to reduce the setback of a ground sign to the front property line from 5 feet to 3 feet for sign number 3 and 4. Those are the directional signs. So again, I ask you for one, not two. Variance to increase the maximum number of ground signs from 1 to 5. Planning recommended the approval of 3, 6, and 7. We're asking for one more, one directional sign to get in and out. And I think it was probably 20 or 30 years ago, there wasn't any requirement about directional signs. You could put as many as you wanted as long as they were reasonable. With respect to the other conditions, the ground sign being a monument sign, as recommended by planning, we have no objection to that. In fact, it's a better idea than what we had, which was a pylon sign. Now you have the special exception individual and general special exception standards. We have to, the first one, parking in a residential district for use located in a business or industrial district. The following requirements have to be met. So the parking is on the same lot and has been in existence to the district boundary line divided the property. I think probably they did a district boundary line in the 50s. Prior to that, it was all density zoning, if you will. Residential portion of the lot is unusable for residential purposes by reason of unsuitable potential access. Again, if you look at the site plan, you can see that that really is, for lack of a better word, dead space, but we're using it to the extent that it will be a buffer forever with respect to this site. The parking does not extend more than 50 feet. We already went into that, into the residential district. The proposed principal building conforms to floor area ratio, building coverage, height and parking requirements for the district in which the building is located. It more than adequately does. There is no issue. Again, it's about 1,800 square feet, so it's well below the requirement of CB. The general standards is the use in harmony with and promotes the general purposes of the chapter. It does. The lot area is adequate. Well, it's way more than adequate. As you can see from the site plan, proposed modifications will not prevent the orderly and reasonable use of adjacent properties. Some of the adjacent properties, although they're a residential use, they're in the CB district, and the other properties are down either Hoffman Lane, and I forget what the other street is, So it really doesn't have an adverse effect on adjacent properties. It's not near a church, school, theater, or recreational recreational area or other place of public assembly. The use conforms to the definition of 322.3. It does. Point of access to and from a public street, this is Pulaski Road, is adequate for traffic and vehicular entrances and exits are clearly visible from the street and not within 75 feet of a street intersection. Again, that conforms to that standard, as you can see from the site plan. Just got a couple of more. The parking is adequate. We meet the parking requirement of 19 spaces. And the way it's designed, as you can see, there's a double queuing going in. The parking is on the side and in the rear. And even though it extends 50 feet into residential, there's about 170 feet to the actual rear property line. The site's not located within the LWRP area. There's adequate provisions made for the collection and disposal of stormwater and sanitary sewage. One thing that's very interesting about this project, you can see from the site plan, again, we had to kind of adjust the building because there is an existing drainage pipe that comes from Pulaski Road all the way down, and it goes to a sump. It even goes under the railroad tracks and into a Smithtown sump. That's going to remain. As far as sanitary, we have to conform to the health department, and there's more than adequate area to accommodate an 1,800 square foot restaurant use. And is the proposed development consistent with the comprehensive plan? I think the board knows that it is. So that's the presentation. Everything that we have submitted with this lot is, the lot is oversized, albeit approximately half of it is, maybe a little more than half is zone residential, but we're encroaching what's permitted under the special exception criteria, and the rest, again, is going to stay natural and be a buffer with any other residences in the area. Thank you.
What are the hours of operation?
I can't hear
The
you.
hours of operation?
The hours of operation. Come up.
You're going to have to come up, please. Just state your name and address for the record.
Anthony Pulizzi, 9 Merry Meeting Lane, Huntington, New York. The hours of operation would be 5 to 11.
5 to 11, 7 days a week?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe close a little earlier on Sundays,
Okay.
maybe 10.
Any proposed lighting on the buildings will be facing down and properly shielded so not to affect the residents?
Yes, as the board well knows, we have to get site plan approval. We have to go to the Board of Site Plan Review, and one of their main requirements now for many years is all lighting has to not emanate from the property and face down.
Are the signs illuminated?
I can't hear you.
Are the signs illuminated?
Some are and
Yes.
and some are not.
Yes, the signs are illuminated, I believe.
Well, the menu signs are, the wall signs, yes, they are.
Are they backlit?
Yes, they're backlit.
Backlit?
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? No? Planning?
I just wanted to touch on one or 2 points. Mr. Tremarco already mentioned that planning did the planning advisory report. We did conditionally approve the application based on some recommendations regarding signage that typically the board does approve and/or deny based on the amount of signs and the location of the signage. Mr. Tramarko already covered that, so I won't really go into that, but I do want to bring up something that was actually discussed late this afternoon in the office between some of the planners regarding this application, and I wanted to share the information with the applicant and with the board. In looking at the plan, Jeff, could you bring up the site plan up on the screen, please? If you look at the site plan, you can see where the zoning boundary line is, and you can see that the parking extends beyond that. In looking at the proposal, clearly the main purpose of the use is the drive-through window, anticipating that, you know, commuters or people throughout the day, they'll see the site, they'll come onto the site, they'll get on the drive-through window lane, they'll utilize that, get what they want, and then leave the site. We don't really anticipate, based on other drive-through facilities in town, that the amount of parking on site is actually going to be that extensive. So we contemplated the idea that perhaps with some of the parking that goes beyond the zoning boundary line, which I believe is 8 or 9 spaces, they might not actually be needed for the operation of the site. And we would recommend, if the applicant agrees, that we could land bank some of those spaces and not have as much paving going beyond the zoning boundary line, and also provide an even bigger buffer to the residences to the east.
That would be fine. We can land bank.
Okay. All right, fine. David, you have anything?
Here we go.
During the environmental review, we had identified some concerns over the number and extent of the requested variances. Mr. Tramarko explained many of those in his presentation. We also wanted to see if there was any public comment related to this, but there were a couple of other items we had identified as potential concerns. In this case, encroachments, but not that the applicant's things are on other people's properties, that there are a few houses to the east who are encroaching with structures onto the applicant's property, what was happening with that. Also, we saw the drainage pipe that Mr. Tramarko spoke about, and that is very near the corner of the building. It appeared to only show the pipe on the plan, and oftentimes Suffolk County, whether there was any input from Suffolk County DPW on this, because oftentimes those are easements that are like 10 feet wide or something. We were concerned that, is this a workable location for that building?
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application? Okay. What we're going to do is bring you up one at a time, state your name and address, spell your last name so we get it correct on the record. Everybody gets one opportunity to speak. When everyone is done, we'll bring back Mr. Tramarko to answer your concerns. All right? Sir, if you'd like to come up first. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Jim Mearns, 68 Pulaski Road, M-U-R-N-S.
Thank you.
68 Pulaski Road, Kings Park, 11754.
Okay.
All right. My biggest concern with this is Mr. DeMarco, with everything is adequate, he says, for what he wants to do. But in the same breath, we're looking at like 15 variances that he wants to change. And my concern with this mainly is the fact that some of these things really do encroach right up against people's property, mine included. And one of the biggest things the owner just said that he was going to be open from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. And they're going to have a menu board that they want to change the variance from that from, I believe it was 65 feet to so many 45 feet or something. Now, I live there. I've lived in that house I'm on the east side of the property. And the menu board is going to be, where they order the food, is going to be facing my house and my neighbor's house towards the back of the property line. And I don't know if I want to listen, especially at 5 a.m., rush hour traffic coming in. Do I want to hear, can I take your order, please, continuously over and over? Now, I know, like in an environmental impact thing, that would be kind of like noise pollution. And how many decibels will it emit? You know, they'll probably come up with something like, we're going to only makes 90 decibels or something, and it's 45 feet away. But you're still going to hear that. You're going to have the traffic that's in there on those lines waiting for their orders. All right? You're going to have people playing their radios in their cars. You hear that now going down Pulaski Road. They stop for the red light. You hear about 5 different radios playing different music. I'm right there. I've lived in the house that I'm in now. It's been in my family for 75 years. I've been living in it for the last almost 60 years. So that point right there, like I've seen this whole neighborhood develop since the 1950s in reality. The people that used to live there had a home there, the house burnt down, and whatever happened with the property, it's been stagnant ever since. I personally do not really want to have the man not be able to develop his property. But I think the way he wants to develop it, I mean, it's his property, but I think his encroachment on the surrounding neighbors and the neighborhood will detract from that. And like Mr. DeMarco said, the traffic is all in code or whatever. But I like living there. If you want to see the exact things that happen, trying to get out of Lou Avenue at 7 o'clock in the morning right now is a disaster. There's a couple of accidents there a month. Not all are reported to the police. There's a lot of rear-end collisions because people right now try to make left turns into the gas station, and people in back of them, they plow right into them, all right? Or else they go around them and hit a car that might be parked on the shoulder, thinking the other car is moving to the light on First Avenue. We've seen that numerous times, myself and my neighbors. And the other thing that I've noticed in my travels is the Dunkin' Donuts on the hill in Smithtown here, and the Dunkin' Donuts over in Comac by Mayfair Shopping Center. At certain hours of the morning, they have the right lane completely blocked from the corner of like Edgewood Avenue all the way down for people trying to get into their drive-in. And then cars coming up the hill stop and block the traffic to try to make a left-hand turn when the car's got the whole driveway blocked. And going to follow the traffic rules here on Pulaski Road, where you're not supposed to, where they'll probably say you can only make a right-hand turn in and a right-hand turn out, is not going to work because nobody obeys those laws anyway. I've noticed it with the Dunkin' Donuts that he has, if it's the same person has the donuts across the street, they have right turn only going out. Nobody pays any attention to it. So those are a few of the things. And the other thing that is of a concern, that back parking lot will become a hangout. At night, after 11 p.m., I can guarantee you that there'll be people back there because they do it now across the street at the gas station. There's broken bottles, there's fights, there's all kinds of stuff goes on. Not all the time, but it happens. So that would be a quality of life. I don't know if that's an environmental type thing, but the noise pollution, and then the cars waiting online to be served, all the engines running, just parked there waiting to go, and the prevailing winds, which is a northwest wind there, will be blowing that stuff, not basically towards me, but towards my neighbors. I don't know if I'm going to get a 10-foot buffer on my property. I was told I was, and I don't know if it's going to happen, but I was supposedly a 10-foot buffer with a 6-foot fence. But now I'm hearing here that there's no 6-foot fence and no buffer. They want everything to be 0. So those are some of my concerns.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is John Grelinski, Grelinski. I live at 34 First Avenue, Kings Park, 11754. Mr. Chairman and board members, I got the same concerns as Mr. Burns. Mr. DeMarco said this thing fits, saying it don't, when you're asking for 13 variances and special exemptions. My main concern is the buffers. If this thing is going to be put there, it's supposed to be a 10-foot buffer. It should have plantings and a fence, because you're going to have nothing but traffic, like he says, going by, and cars idling, causing air pollution. And even by Mr. Barnes' own words, Director of Environmental Protection Director says, a written statement that this is an over-intensification of the property, which I believe it is. Mr. Tramarko mentioned the length of the port. The length is very fine, but the width is not. So, in conclusion, I got the same concerns: noise pollution, air pollution, traffic. I could go on about this for a number of factors, but the gist of it is, this is not a good fit for the property. And as far as the hours, it's 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So you got a 4-hour break, 5-hour break from it. So, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Up, come on up, sir.
Henry Hoffman, 106 Pulaski
speak-
Road.
Can you speak into the mic, please, sir?
Henry Hoffman, 106 Pulaski Road, Kings Park. They put it, when they redone Pulaski Road there a few years ago, they put a big catch basin there. And when that rains hard, all that runs back into Lou Avenue. And then it goes, I guess, into the sewer system under the tracks. A girl years ago, it was a flood there, and an accident, she froze to the road in the cold weather. They had to pry her off the road. My house, they planted pear tree in front of it. My neighbors, they come down there and hit that. I have no more pear tree, and neither does my neighbor. Another kid came up the road a few years ago, hit the pole by my house into a cement wall there, the house before 7-Eleven. It's accident prone. The road curves, and then if you're going west, you got to make a left turn into Duncan with that thing, and coming out, if you're going west, you got to make a left out. You'll need a station, an ambulance there. Be accident heaven. All right, so think about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? No one? Okay. Mr. Tramarko, would you like to come back?
So, we understand the concerns that the residents have. I think at least 2 out of the 3 residents, if not the 3 residents, live in a central business zone. So their property is not even zone residential, it's zone central business. Not that we feel that we don't have to be concerned with respect to their concerns. The property's 167 feet wide. It's not a small frontage on Pulaski. And, you know, if the board desires and requires, we can put a fence after the parking setback into residential wherever they want it. And if you want it on the sidelines, we can do that too. We're not objecting to it. I mean, CB doesn't require it between, you know, central business uses. But if the board makes it a condition, we'd be happy to put a fence on each side. And we'll go up to and even with a building on each side.
And you have a 10-foot buffer there, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a 10-foot buffer.
But we'd be more than happy to plant that with whatever the board would like, and we'll put a fence if you guys would like that. Honestly, whatever is necessary to make the residents happy and make the board happy,
All right,
we're
thank
okay.
you.
One of the
We operate
concerns-
another location in the town of Smithtown. I currently operate about 25 locations in Suffolk County. We have one on Smithtown Boulevard. We've been operating there for several years. We've never, in any of our locations, had a single complaint after we're open and operating from a resident, from a town, ever, never one. So we really take pride in how we operate within the community. And I just want to make that clear that I'm more than happy to do anything the residents need us to do. Obviously approved by the board. All right.
The neighbors were concerned about noise. Several other similar operations use special ambient noise menu boards that actually adjust based on the ambient noise that's around. Is that something that you plan on employing?
They use the latest technology on the menu boards, constantly updating it. I just replaced all of the menu boards in all of my locations.
I'm
with
sorry, can
systems
you
like-
just use the
I'm sorry,
microphone
yes.
so everybody can hear you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So yeah, I just recently replaced menu boards in other locations without being asked by the town for that reason, with the most current menu board, speaker systems and all of that. Again, I do hear this a lot at meetings, people's concern about that. But again, since we've been open operating, we've never had a single complaint. And I've operated for 2 decades in Suffolk County. And most of my locations are drive-throughs.
I don't think the people in the back could hear you.
I'm
Can you just go over the new technology on the menu board again, please?
So it's basically a lower, like, ambient sound technology that contains it to a certain amount of area. The decibels don't extend out to the adjoining properties. We've had it in several locations, and we've never received a single complaint from residents. A lot of residents do come to hearings with concerns similar, but since we've been operating, we've never, ever had a complaint from a resident, and we have very good relationship with the residents around our properties.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to make one other point. One of the gentlemen indicated that there were 2 other Dunkin' Donuts, I believe one in Comac and one in by Edgewood Avenue, and the queuing goes out into the street. If you look at the queuing here, we have double queuing coming around and changing to single queuing when it passes the menu board. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 14 car queuing. So we don't anticipate anybody being out in the street. Those other locations which were mentioned has single queuing. I know because I pass both of them all the time. So I think that issue is not going to be an issue with respect to this application.
Okay. fine.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. No. No. No, sir. Thank you. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
Can I just ask a quick question?
Certainly.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask the applicant, one of the concerns from the neighbors was the hours of operation, 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. Their concern is that it's a long day, it's a long evening, and that there's very little time in between closing time and opening time the following morning, that they're getting a break from the lights, the noise, so forth and so on. Is there any possibility to alter the hours of operation, like starting at 6 and closing at 10?
Not at 6. It wouldn't work for us. I mean, we operate the store across the street right now, the Dunkin' that's literally across the street from the location. We're open 5 a.m. to midnight currently. So we actually are scaling it back slightly to 11. We really couldn't open at 6 a.m. though. We need that time to get ready. It's really not very busy, 5 to 6. Really not busy at all. And this is a residential area, right? There's more than like a Jericho Turnpike. So we really don't anticipate it to be busy at all, 5 to 6 a.m. But it's more about opening, setting up, getting the crew ready, and, you know, but Duncan requires us to be open at 5 a.m., so I really don't have.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I have a motion to close the application, please? Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Here we go. The next application on the agenda, case number 18800, Bahama Breeze Holdings LLC, 612 Smith Haven Mall, Lake Grove. The location of the property is the northeast corner of Middle Country Road and Alexander Avenue. The property is zoned SCB. The applicant is requesting a modification of a special exception for outdoor dining, a variance of a special exception standard to permit walls higher than 4 feet with roll-down canopies, a variance of a special exception standard to permit year-round outdoor dining.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. William Benesso for Chelly Deegan Tirana, 333 Earl Ovington Boulevard, Uniondale, New York, here on behalf of the applicant, Bahama Breeze Holdings, LLC. With me this evening also is Mr. Richard Warner, Director of Operations for Northeast Region for Bahama Breeze. We also have Ms. Susie Gregorian from Lampert Group, the firm that filed the application and took care of the mailings and postings, the affidavits for which I'll hand up now. I'm also going to hand up a handout, 13-page handout for the board to use for reviewing the application and also just to follow along. As noted by Mr. Donadio, this application relates to an existing Bahama Breeze restaurant situated within the southwest, very southwest corner of the Smith Haven Mall. It is in close proximity to the corner formed by the intersection of Alexander Avenue and Middle Country Road. But that said, it's entirely within the mall property and only accessed from within the mall property. That restaurant is existing. It was approved by this board back in 2012. It was built and opened in 2014 and has been operating ever since. Among the reliefs granted by this board was seasonal outdoor dining for the restaurant. It maintains an approximately 1,700 square foot outdoor dining area on the south side, the front side of the building, which has been used and operated in accordance with the restrictions and conditions imposed by this board since it opened. There have been no issues with that outdoor dining. It has been fully compliant based upon inquiries both of my client and of the town. There have been no violations, no summonses associated with it, noise for operating beyond the hours of operation or the seasonal operational period. Everything is in compliance, which is not surprising because Bahama Breeze is part of the Darden family of restaurants. It's a very professional organization. They're good corporate neighbors. They make sure that they do the right thing by the local community. That said, this is entirely a commercial area. You have the mall property directly to the north and east. You have Alexander Avenue to the west with a automotive service shop to the west of that and the DOT yard to the west of that. To the south, you have Middle Country Road and then commercial properties to the south of that. So you really don't have any residential properties that would even be disturbed if there was an issue with noise. But that said, it has operated without incident and in compliance with all of the conditions imposed by this board. Why we're here this evening is to request a modification to our prior special exception approval and variances from the special exception requirements so that we can change the seasonal outdoor dining to permanent outdoor dining, year-round outdoor dining. In order to do that, we need a variance from the requirement that there be no walls higher than 4 feet. Right now, there are railings, PVC railings that enclose the outdoor dining area. What we are proposing to add for this outdoor dining area are overhead heaters, gas-powered or fired overhead heaters, and vinyl roll-downs, which come out of aluminum casings that, if you take a look at the latter pages of the handout I gave out, you'll see some images of some that are on other Bahama Breezes. It's probably the 6th or 7th page. There's a photo of the existing Bahama Breeze. You can see the outdoor dining area. It does not have any enclosures on it. And then there are 2 pages of photos with it shows the blue vinyl roll downs. The second page shows a close-up of them. You can see that they're very neat. When they are not engaged, they roll into that aluminum casing that you see above. They're not visible at all when they're not engaged. It's not like they get rolled up or strapped up and you see fabric hanging down. They're completely invisible when they're not in use, and when they are in use, they completely drop to the floor, and you have the plastic enclosure that provides light for the area. So those 2 items would be added in order to give them the opportunity to utilize the space year-round. And it's really, practically speaking, it's to be used in 2 fashions. The first really is just to extend the season beyond the April 1st to the October 31st, which is what is permitted under seasonal. With latter part of February, March, September, or excuse me, November, even the early December, there are times when it's nice enough out where you can have those enclosures not engaged, but having the heaters on gives the ability to have dining patrons sit out there comfortably and still have the open air. That's important for the branding of this particular restaurant. Bahama Breeze is an island decor, island atmosphere product of Darden's. It has a Caribbean-esque feel to it, if you will, and that outdoor open area on the dining area outside is something that is also part of their use. The other aspect of it, for those extending that seasonal period to keep the actual outdoor areas open but just heated, is in light of the pandemic that, thank God, we seem to be coming out of. There are still people who are not comfortable being in enclosed spaces and still opt for, when available, the ability to sit outside, and this would permit that to be accommodated when the enclosures are up. Obviously, when it gets very cold in the winter months, December, January, February, the enclosures will be down, and that outdoor area will really be used, I'm told, as overflow areas on their busiest demand days. Friday nights, Saturday nights, Sunday during sporting games, sporting events, they have TVs out there. So it'll help them with the ability to accommodate more patrons, which obviously helps their return. Now, all that being said, there will be no other change in the operation whatsoever. Same hours of operation, same site circulation, same site access, same number of seats outside. They're not expanding the seating outside. They're not expanding the space outside. It will all be exactly as it is presently. So all of the standards that the board deemed to have been met previously will be met here, but for the fact that when the enclosures are engaged, you will have walls higher than 4 feet because they will totally enclose that outdoor area. You also won't have the storage of the equipment that's out there off-site, off the outdoor area from October 31st to April 1st, as is required by the code. That we would seek to waive because we'll be using it during those periods. But it will permit the quote-unquote permanent outdoor dining, which is now something that is defined and considered by the code for a use such as this. Now, Again, beyond that, there are no other zoning requirements that are triggered as a result of this. Yes, we don't need additional parking relief. When the application was first approved, that outdoor dining area was already calculated for parking because it was in excess of 1,000 square feet, so that is already built in. The only thing, however, that does need to be considered, and this was pointed out by Mr. Donadio's Planning Advisory Report, and we completely acknowledge it, there are 2 items that we need to address. One with the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, the Wastewater Management Division, because now that our outdoor dining will be no longer seasonal, but rather year-round, that area gets calculated instead of 50%, it'll be calculated on the whole, and it increases, theoretically, legally, it increases our flow, so we have to check with Suffolk County Department of Health Services to make sure that the flow can appropriately be accommodated. Practically speaking, on an hourly basis, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, the flow's not going to change because we're not adding seats, we're not adding space, it's just going to be used the same way as it's being used April to October 31st. But if you were to calculate all of the flow in the course of a year, yes, it will increase. But we don't think that'll be an issue with the Suffolk County Department of Health Services. The other item identified by Mr. Donadio's Planning Advisory Report is the occupancy, and asking us to confirm that the occupancy and egress points are acceptable to the Smithtown Fire Marshal. Because we now will have enclosures, the concern is that it could affect egress points. I will tell you, included in the handout is a furnishings plan which shows the number of seats and the points of egress. Our points of egress are not changing. We will still have 2 points of egress, and as much as it might be easier without the enclosures down for somebody to escape, God forbid, during an emergency over a railing, that's not considered a legal form of egress anyway in terms of how the fire marshal looks at it. But nonetheless, we're happy to engage the Smithtown Fire Marshal, show him the plan, and make sure that it's acceptable to him. But beyond that, it is an important need for the applicant. It will provide them the ability to accommodate their customers by stretching the season and help with their overall returns, and we certainly feel that it will not have any impact on the surrounding community. All of the standards that were determined by this board to be complied with will still be complied with, but for the exceptions we need from the variances we need from the standards that are imposed.
Okay. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
No? Planning?
Mr. Chairman, as Mr. Benesso pointed out, he touched all the points that were in the Planning Advisory Report. I would probably defer to David because he is the Environmental Director, and I think he's in a better position to speak about the wastewater requirements. I just mentioned them in the Planning Advisory Report because it does appear that there could be a conflict when this is actually proposed to Suffolk County.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant's attorney did address that. The flow for Suffolk County Health Department purposes is increased because these are year-round seats instead of seasonal seats. So their mathematical calculations are that they generate more wastewater. So we were looking for some additional information related to that the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, an application's been submitted and it meets the requirements. We were concerned because on recent other applications within the mall property, there's been difficulties for the applicants on obtaining those flows. The mall as a whole is very near its maximum capacity. So we want to get some more information on that.
Okay, thank you. So there's no action on this until those 2 items are
No,
clear?
we recognize that. Mr. Donadio's report was very clear, and I had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Donadio. He was kind enough to discuss it with me. So we understand that the board won't be making a decision until those items are addressed, and we're fine with that.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Thank
And that concludes our meeting for tonight.